That's my.
Yeah.
Saying this kind of like same. Or, you know,
Like those camp outside. Maybe somebody on Facebook, now you Township.
also that is what it is. Yeah. That does.
Yeah.
what it's-
Ray called it.
Right.
We're all together.
I don't have the ability to go to the knowledge. I hate, because I have a lower fall, but I hate it. So driving out. There goes the tire. I've had some. People about tire. Well, I don't know for sure from there, but went down. Well, I positive. And then like I saw. Yeah. So I tried to just revise that. But I didn't start. I'm gonna push it start and do the right foot. Plus, you know, that's the work. Finance.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's that my.
It's the top of the hour. Let's go ahead and get started.
Send you another.
I'd like to welcome everybody this morning to the
That left in the company.
Board of Trustees meeting for Wasatch Front Waste and Recycling. I'm Dan Gibbons, I'm the chair. We're grateful to have a full house today. In fact, do we have any board members online? I don't think we do. This is a first. Sherry, it's been a long time.
The conversation will be much easier.
We also have a new camera system. If you speak, it'll see, it's a heat-seeking missile. Tell a bad joke, it's gonna find you. So there's the first example. So anyway, why don't we go ahead and Katerina Garcia, have our board clerk call the roll.
Thank you. Chair Dan Gibbons.
Here.
Vice Chair Anna Barbieri.
Here.
Cindy Sharkey.
Here.
Eric Barney. Greg Shelton.
Here.
Keith Sussman.
Here.
Lori Stringer. Patrick Schaefer. Robert Pignon.
Here.
There's Scott Brackett.
Yes.
Terry Warren.
Yes.
Tessa Spencer. Tom Decider. Lori Stringer. And face magazine.
I think that was our,
Looks like we have Eric Barney.
Good morning.
Eric. And so it appears we have a quorum. Thank you, Katerina. I'd like to welcome Hazel Dunsmore, our new HR manager, Pam. Hazel.
Yes, sorry about that. We're working on packets.
That's okay.
Yeah, Hazel Dunsmore, would you mind standing up? Has joined us we stole her away from Draper City. And I'm gonna let you tell all about your great history, but I want to let you know that how thankful I am and feeling blessed that Hazel walked through our door. Very hit the ground running, make a huge difference. So please,
Good morning, everyone. First, I want to say how happy I am to be working here. It's a really positive culture. I feel very welcomed and supported, and great organization, great values. And thank you. So yeah, out of my 40 years of working, about half of that has been with local government. So I was provost many years ago, Springville City, and then most recently at Draper. At Draper, I was the HR director, and went all the way through the pandemic and all of the activity and, being so hectic during that time. And at the end of it, like a lot of people, you've heard about the great resignation and big turnover. at the end of it, I thought, I think I'd like to try something different. So I applied to be the solid waste manager at Draper City. So for the last year and a half prior to coming here, I was supervising trash and recycling pickup. So I have a great deal of respect for the drivers, the equipment operators, and what they go through on a daily basis, and also customer service, the type of calls that they get. So I feel really, it's amazing to actually find a job that has both HR and solid waste management. So on a personal note, I'm a grandma. I love being a grandma. I have 2 children, and 3 grandchildren, and 3 grandpuppies. I always have to count those. In my spare time, I like to read. I'm kind of a movie buff. I love to bake, and I think that's about all. Thank you so much.
Well, welcome.
Well, thank you. So excited.
Thank you. I have 2 granddaughters myself. Okay, also, we ought to recognize Mayor Brett Hales from Murray City, who's with us today, not officially, but he'll be a member of the board. Hopefully, we believe, maybe by next month. So Brett, good to have you with us.
Thanks.
Okay, moving on to item 2, consent agenda. The June 26, 2023 board meeting minutes were in our packet. Any corrections, comments? All right, if not, I'll take a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Okay, good. Minutes are approved. All right, we'll now open the meeting for public comments. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. Do we have anyone either in the boardroom here or online who wishes to make a comment? Do we know any comments, Pam or Katarina?
The only constituent I heard from, has not gotten back, so I think he was taken care of with the scrap program.
Okay, doesn't appear we have, yes, Lori.
I did have one phone call from residents in my area, just the same day I talked about it being blown over. Apparently, they saw and sent me a picture, and we'll pull it up, but of our guys getting out and cleaning up all of the dumped over things, put them all back in and then dumping them. So he just said, this is amazing, Tom, thanks.
Great, thank you. And it was the recycling. Last Monday was a challenge with the wind blowing, with the wind
There's nothing standing anywhere. I put mine up 4 times and refilled it 4 times.
Yeah. I had a similar experience like a month or 2 ago when there was a windstorm and rain. And yeah, so our crews are amazing. So, all right, we'll then close the public comment portion of the meeting. Move on to item 4, business items. First item is a request for reclassification for the equipment operator, apprentice trainers, and training coordinator positions. Pam, you want to lead us in a discussion on this with help from Hazel, and also welcome Melissa Cotter, our consultant. So.
Yes. And we could switch a little bit that way and sort of this way and have our wonderful HR manager and Melissa join us at the table. I think everyone is familiar with Melissa and her great talents and compensation. So I'm just going to kick it off. I think that you all are familiar with the apprentice program. You approved it and the 2 apprentice positions, tier 1 and tier 2 back in June, I believe it was, since we didn't meet in July. So I believe you understood that we were going to come forward and ask for additional reclassifications. Again, we're not increasing our FTE, we're using vacant FTE driver positions to reclassify. So there are 2 trainer positions to help with the 2 apprentice positions that we already have some folks kind of waiting in the wings that we feel would be great candidates for that. But we need to make sure we have the trainers in place to help them set them up to succeed, basically. So what you're going to see before you and what I reached out to kind of run through some of the hot topics is that we're trying to carve out a training unit within our operations. And what we have found over the years and what definitely I've seen is that our daily operations really takes everything we have to make sure that we're picking up 16,800 homes every day. So it's 8,500, 85,000 homes a week. We break that up, try to balance the workloads as best we can. The other piece is that it's not just about the apprentices, it's about existing drivers and helping them to retain employment, because accidents happen. Even if somebody's been here over 5 years, but we've seen the pattern and the trend of in the first 3 years is when we see the most incidents and accidents. And sometimes we have to let folks go, or the driver may not feel confident and they leave. So we want to try to retain those folks immediately. So the other piece is the 2 trainers, but we're also talking about a coordinator position. We really need somebody that's not thrown into the daily mix and operations of picking up the trash to oversee and coordinate this program, working with supervisors, managers, drivers. How do we design this program best to help the drivers, existing drivers, new hire drivers, and the apprentices succeed, so we launch and keep services going. So if there's no questions so far, we can run through where we're at. And I talked about the daily staffing levels. We work 5 days a week. We pick up trash 5 days a week. We have 65 driver allocations, equipment operator allocations. We have rotating day off, so it's a 4-10 schedule for equipment operators, so they rotate the day off. So every day we have 20% or 13 drivers off. Okay, and that's before we get into any kind of vacancies. We have 10 driver vacancies right now. However, we have 3 that are starting this week, new hires today. Yes. So again, Hazel's bustling. Shane will work with them on health and safety as well to get them versed and ready to go out there and start picking up trash after training. So we know that we're gonna fill those vacancies, eventually, it just takes time. So again, talking about the daily workload, those 3 will not be ready, right? They're not gonna be able to go out there on their own for a while. So, we're trying to uncover what we call uncovered routes, from vacancies, or we have a full staff, but we may have people on vacation, sick leave. Normally, our relief pool is 9 drivers, and then from that, you have people that will take time off for vacation and sick. Right now, our relief pool is -1.
Oh,
Yeah, so we have drivers working on their day off to accrue overtime. There are some that really enjoy that. There's others that will come in if we are desperate and need them. But the bottom line is we don't want to burn people out, right? We need them to sustain through the long hauls, and we don't want them leaving because of burnout.
Dan, you may have to start driving. You're next in line.
Well, we could go to the bicycle route,
Right.
like Pam has.
Is that anybody?
Hook a can to the back of our bikes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we won't have to have the CDL that way. We'll be fighting over the lighter cans, so recycling cans. So at any rate, I think you can understand the story and the challenges that we have. And I'm thankful for our team, Renee, Andy, David, everyone. I'm probably gonna leave people out if I start naming people, but it's a team effort to try to come up with some creative ways to fill the gaps. So very proud of the team. So going through this, and I'll be honest, when Renee and Andy said we're gonna need 3 classifications, I was a little taken aback because I was expecting 2. And then when I heard 3, I'm like, whoa. And so we started going through everything that I'm talking to you about today. And then as I walked through it with Hazel and Melissa, who were instrumental in, it really is needed. We've got to have somebody really coordinate this job. The 2 trainer positions will have assigned routes. They will be part of a group. So they will use those routes to train the apprentices, new hires, existing drivers for refresh. The coordinator position won't have an assigned route. That's the key. They will be set aside, but they will fill in with an uncovered route and use that as a training as needed. the hope is they're not continually doing that because we know that that just, from supervisors going out and filling in, there's some things that get left behind. We don't want to do that. So, that's the gist of it. I want to make sure I've covered everything. The minimum qualifications for the trainer is 3 years, and then the coordinator position is 3 years with 1 year of leadership. So that's a key as well. So there is a difference in the pay scale. Did I cover enough to turn it over to you two? And then Paul has some finances to go through so you understand it is an increased cost. I think it's worth it. I think it will help with turnover, which we know creates increased costs with training and rehiring or what have you. So I'll be quiet for a moment. Turn it over to you two.
Great. So, what part I played in this was kind of looking at the job descriptions that were created and kind of making a determination as to what market approach could be used or what internal equity approach could be used in how to compensate for these positions. And so if you look at the job summary and minimum qualifications of the equipment operator, apprentice trainer, it's very, very similar to what a lead equipment operator is doing right now. But the difference is there's a different skill. One is leading a team and the other one is training an individual. And so what happens is if you don't have anyone to train at that current time, this allows that position to go back in and operate as a lead. And so it basically changes your frontline workers that are leading a team or training from 9 to 11. And that ratio still works within the model that Wasatch or Woodford has created. And so it made sense to just make the recommendation to keep the pay the same as the lead equipment operator. And currently how that's set up is we pay 10% above the midpoint of an equipment operator. And so there's not really an increase other than just relying on the trainers to do similar work as what a lead would be doing, but they're focused more on the training aspect than versus leading the team of equipment operators. And so that one kind of made sense as far as how that fell. When we got into talking about the coordinator, we were really just trying to think of where does this fit? Where does this fall? How does this look? And really and truly, if you look at the job summary and the minimum qualifications, we require a little bit more from this position than we do for the lead. And so obviously this pay needs to be, the range needs to be a little bit higher than what it is for the lead. And one of the key things that makes this position stand out is they are also aiding in the performance evaluation process. And so you're looking at someone who's not only coordinating the training program within operations, but they're also working with other people within Woodford to make sure that this program is successful, whether they're working with the safety and emergency coordinator, if they're working with different supervisors or managers. It's kind of key because if you just put an additional responsibility onto a collection supervisor, there's just not a whole lot more because they're already wearing a lot of hats to be able to coordinate an additional program on top of it. It just kind of, it doesn't make the opportunity for Woodford to have a full training unit without this coordinator position. And with that in mind, when Hazel and I and Cam met and talked about it, it just made sense to kind of look at what compensation would, where this position fall. And there's truly not market data for someone who's just managing equipment operator training coordination. There within the survey data world, this would be more of a human resource function where they just have a training person who creates training programs for a whole organization. Where this one was unique, what my recommendation was to look at internal equity. There's a midpoint differential between your lead equipment operator and your collection supervisor of 20%. And so my recommendation was just to increase the lead equipment operator range by an additional 10% to create that coordinator position. And then therefore, if we look at this as kind of like a clear progression route, you've got equipment operator, you've got lead equipment operator with the potential to either train, become a coordinator, and or collection supervisor. And so it kind of falls well within that. And if you look at page 34, you can kind of see on the pay plan, the positions that are highlighted where they fall internally within the positions. You can see where the coordinator kind of falls within the rest of the coordinator positions that WFWRD currently has. And then you can also see that we have the equipment operator, apprentice trainer, right in line with the lead equipment operator. The recommendation again would be to start pay at the 25th percentile, just like we do with the other operation positions that have that CDL.
I don't have any other input except that I'm really impressed with Melissa's methodology. And I'm excited about the apprentice program that works. The River City, we did that with building inspectors, which were in short demand. So, yeah, thank you.
Any questions that we could answer?
Yeah, any questions from the board at this point? I just have a comment. I love how it factors in a career ladder option for our team that wasn't there before. So that's got to help with retention. I don't know if we can quantify how it would help with retention, but it seems like it could really help with retention. Someone has room to grow in their career.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
the only, this probably put partly into the financial presentation, but adding the coordinator and we get the apprentice, what is the impact on overtime? Are you gonna be able to reduce overtime? So if I'm looking at those dollars, if we reduce overtime, it's actually gonna pay for those positions. Because again, bringing back budget and somewhat into line versus, pushing those dollars. And we love the staff. I know they like the extra cash, but at some point, that is, we all know is if everybody's working overtime, there's going to be burnout, even though there is some incentive for overtime, but burnout is a possibility. So that's one of the questions, and whether that rolls into the budget process here or financials, and how that really going to impact us.
Very good point. And I think over time, we will be able to measure that and capture that and answer the question. Of course, the desire is to do just that. I think if we do get these positions filled, if what we're dreaming about really comes true, which I think it will with the efforts from our team, then yes, there should be, and I think there will be reduction in time. But it will take time to measure that.
I would think also that, there's also, I would think, a liability, savings at some point too, because the better trained your operators are, less likely that you're gonna have accidents and those things. Accidents happen regardless if you're a really good driver or not, because there's other people on the road too. But I think it will help towards the liability costs and things of that nature. The better that they're trained, the better we can keep those accidents from occurring.
Very good point. And I'll get a little more into that, showing the value of just having Shane here of the differences that we're seeing already compared to last year's. There is big savings. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Yeah.
So this is, you said you have 65 equipment operators. So that's amongst all these various things. You're just reclassifying 3. Okay. How long does it take us to train somebody before you let them go?
Minimum of 2 weeks. That's if they come in with sanitation experience, garbage truck experience, depending on how they do. But it's a minimum of 2. It could be 3 weeks. It just depends on where they're at. But they do not get turned loose, so to speak, on a route until the trainer is comfortable. And
Well,
roughly they.
obviously, while I'm assuming while they're training, there's 2 guys in the truck. So you're not actually getting an extra route out of that.
Correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
And the training coordinator is
not always necessarily out in the truck. So, that's actually a shorter time frame than I was thinking. You're saying you're currently down 10 overall, you're adding 3 more in. How would this change with those? How would you train those 3 if you only got 2 trainers?
Good question. So the trainer position is an internal recruitment. And so it gives opportunity for equipment operators to advance who are already trained, who understand the routes, et cetera. Or lead equipment operator to move over. Maybe they're tired of leading a group and they'd rather train only. So it's totally internal. The coordinator position is going to be internal and external. Because I have the philosophy, and we as a team talked about this, at what point do we want to go external? But our internal candidates can still compete. We have folks that have been pretty much helping to design this program. Well, they apply for the coordinator position. So there's still that opportunity. Of course, that creates some vacancies elsewhere, which gives opportunity to hire more people to come in. We saw our first yellow truck driver come in, who starts today. And will we see more of those because of that bankruptcy and drivers being out there? It's nationwide.
Tell me the yellow.
Yellow trucking went bankrupt.
Okay.
So there are CDL drivers out there. In fact, the National Waste and Recycling Association has reached out to employers and said, here's an opportunity. Get online, give them an opportunity to see who you are, where you are, so that they can apply. So far.
That's awesome.
People need jobs, which is glad to hear that, right? It's,
Yellow's a
so far,
long
we're-
haul.
Yeah.
Trucking, right?
it takes a little time to get used to the stop and
Actually
go.
going home.
Yeah, the sidearm.
Yeah, yeah, but yeah, there's a good point, board member Brackett, people want to be home.
It's a different lifestyle, for sure.
I hope that answers.
Yeah, any other questions?
Yes, this is Eric Barty with Magna. Thank you, Pam, for bringing this to us. I do have some questions and concerns with the program as it relates to how are we going to measure the success of the program moving forward. For context, I've spent the latter half of my career leading a learning and development team for Goldman Sachs. Some of you know that. And so training is something I'm extremely passionate about. But what I see lacking here in this proposal is a stated desired outcome that's measurable, that demonstrates the financial or employee value and how we're going to measure that. I don't know what the baseline is now, and I don't know what we're hoping to achieve in the long run. And what I'm talking about here is not just our employees satisfied, because that's a challenging thing to measure truly, but what is the financial benefit to this organization, and what is the capability or skill set development improvement that we expect to see over time?
So Renee, do you want to speak to a stat that we hope to achieve in that investment?
So when we were looking at the proposal of the apprenticeship program in and of itself, we looked at, safety was one of the items because, member Lauren had brought up, we saw that the retraining of our folks that, once they reach like one accident, let's get them retrained. But then as new folks come in, we're then getting them fully prepared and grow the own driver. And so financially, more than the Bernie, I think that where we're going to see the biggest benefit is safety and long-term employees. So we have to think about that.
OT would be one way, and I apologize, we didn't put more in there about financial, it's a very good point. So I think measuring OT, and we don't have the baseline in there right now for this proposal. Paul will go through where we're at on overtime versus salaries as he goes into through his financial report. I don't know if you want to jump to that now or.
I think it would be good to put in some sort of a Do we see our accidents going down? It's really understanding that too. Here's the implication of the program, implementation of the program over this period of time. Once they're trained, do we see our accident rate going down? Do we have, those types of things would maybe be an indicator. It is a little bit hard to put exact. I mean, goals, I appreciate the comment on 100%, but where's the measurables on it? It's a little bit vague as far as how you would measure it.
Yeah, safety percentage, a KPI, the nutrition rates.
Yeah.
Which I think we could probably come up with that.
Yeah, and to board member Barney's point, it would be great to have a baseline on those factors. Yeah, and we're in such a strange environment, economically, I mean, in the workplace with all sorts of industries, it's really difficult to pin this down, but I really do appreciate Eric's comment. And so let's establish some kind of a baseline so that we can measure in the future and see how successful or unsuccessful we are with this.
Right. I think accidents, the insurance rates, or things like that are things we can do. I would suggest the public at least an annual review and maybe a 3-year hard look. Saying, is the program actually working? If it's not, maybe that's where we look to review to whether we do, or, this was a good idea, but didn't really yield any of the results we wanted. Sometimes things get started and they just never get brought up again, so it's kind of always there. But it's a good program and it's running right, it ought to yield the results.
And I guess, Eric, your main point is what are the results that we want? And the way I saw the program was the main result we want is for drivers to come and stay. Is that right?
Retention, yeah.
Yeah. So I think for me, this wasn't a criticism of the program. I fully support, and Pam and I had a conversation about this earlier. I fully support the creation of this team. I just want to make sure they're set up for success from day one. And as a learning professional myself, if you come into a role and you don't have a stated goal or objective, you don't know what success is supposed to look like for you, it's going to be very challenging for you to prove your efficacy or your team's contributions. And so my recommendation or my request would be that we think through what are those quantifiable objectives that we think we can achieve with a learning and development program. We baseline those before the learning and development program goes out, and then we get a report back to the board on the success or lack of success, depending on what happens over time. And I think we can find the measurables. Pam, I'd recommend looking at, if you're familiar, Kirkpatrick's levels of evaluation would be a great place to start as you determine what the measurable objectives are. But it should be something, and we should be able to baseline it, and we should be able to track it and then report on it later.
So we could probably set up a scorecard. Yeah, I think easily to where, it's like each, kind of as it comes in, we can then look at the effectiveness. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for your comments. I will get with Hazel and Renee and Andy and David, and we'll design it.
Comment real quick. I think, we already gathered data points on our drivers now. And so I would assume that the 3 areas that I've heard you talk about in the past are, safety is one, of course. You bet retention is another, but I think it's another one that would be an interesting one to gather is confidence of the drivers with their skills. And making sure we're looking at how confident do they feel? Do they have the right to be able to come back and say, you know what? We just go over something. Can I come with you one more time? Can I see this? Can I do that? Or there's a really tricky part in my route. Can we do that together? So I can see what, those type of things I think are very effective. And not just looking at what we see of them, but how they feel coming back. So we're making sure that we are looking at confidence levels as well with our employees and understanding where they feel like they're being supported and when they feel like they need some more support.
Right.
Other comments or questions? Do we want to talk about the financial piece of this?
Yeah, you scroll on back up to the page right there with financials. And I will turn the time over to Paul and he can walk through his methodology and where we are.
Now, on this, just what we did was looked at just what's the incremental cost, because these are positions that are not, we're not adding it. So what's the incremental cost on these positions? And when we look at this, starting up at the top, we looked at 4 months in 2023. And what's the projected hourly pay rate? We did the 50 percentile and then increased that for benefits that are applicable to that. And that's not our total rate there as far as benefits, but the incremental benefits at 26, I think it's 25.5, I'm going off memory. I can't see the screen from here. But as far as this goes, we just looked at the incremental piece. And so you look at that, you look at 4 months. We looked at 4 months, and so the first category, equipment operator, apprentice trainer, the midpoint 50% tile was 28.71. Down at the total projected costs for 4 months for 25,190. And then we compared that versus the equipment operator with their wage at the 50 percentile, the same hourly benefit rate, 4 months. And so when you go down for each position, there's 2 positions, it was a $3,237 increase for 4 months. And then over on the right-hand side of that, we're just doing the same calculation for a year. And so when we look at that, it's base times, 40 hours a week. The incremental cost for the equipment operator, apprentice trainer, both of those would be at $19,460 a year. And so that was the incremental cost for those 2 positions. And then down below that, a similar calculation for the equipment operator and training coordinator position. Again, we use the 50th percentile in the wage. And then the benefits over 4 months. And down at the bottom there for the total projected incremental cost for 4 months was $5,756. And then on an annual basis, that was $17,267. So, but like I said, what we were trying to do here was just show that these are the incremental costs. We're not adding MFTs, but there would be associated costs with this. And we assume 50 percentile in both cases. I think that's good for comparison. That could be different depending upon the experience of the people that applied for and do these positions.
All right. Any other comments or questions from the board?
I think it's an excellent investment. I think especially as tight as the job market is, I think that money easily comes back to Woodward in a positive way. Job well done.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, you can spend a lot of money trying to recruit people, and then you can get some people in, and how much does it cost to train someone for 2 weeks? And you'll find out that's not gonna work. That person isn't gonna work. This is a bargain.
Okay, if there's no other comments or questions, we have the 3 positions, the 2 apprentice trainers, the Yodas, I guess, they're training their apprentices, right? And then we have the training coordinator position, and I think the request is that we approve this as a board. We have the discussion we've had about a baseline is very important, but I think what I would suggest is that we approve this program with the direction for a baseline to be established, baseline on the those items to be established as far as accidents and retention and confidence. And does that sound like any, okay, well, good. Why don't we, I'll entertain a motion then to approve the program as outlined.
I'll make that motion.
Are we also approving the finances for this one?
Yes, and also approving the finances as they affect the budget. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Hi.
Was that Sherry or Lori? I'm sorry.
That was
Yeah.
our.
That's Laurie. Yeah. Any opposed? All right, that program was approved. Thank you so much, Melissa and Hazel. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we better have Paul move front and center because I think
You're up.
we're moving into second quarter financial report and cash projection updates. Paul.
So this is for the 6 months ending June 30th, 2023. And so going through here, we'll just start with, our standard format and talk about these different categories. But as far as revenues go, we increased 1.8 million from 2022 to 2023. And the increase was primarily due to an increase in residential waste collection fees of 1.4 million. And that was really primarily due to the fee increase. That's the biggest piece of that. And then also we had 133,000 positive change in gain loss on investments and a $179,000 increase in interest income. And so we talked about interest income, given the current markets and interest rates, and that's really benefiting us. That's one positive for us. We'll talk about increased costs, but the other side of it is there is some increased interest income, which doesn't cover all the costs, but it's still a benefit. We'll look at it as a positive. So right now in PTIF, we're getting 5.1%. Last year at this time, we were getting less than 1%. And so that's helped us and that's the increase. But revenues are up. We planned on this. We're glad we got the fee increase and that it happened. And we'll go down and look at the costs. Some of that leaves us quite as positive. But fortunately, the revenues did increase. So, any questions on any of the revenues for categories here? Okay, I'll move on to the next one. And then this is personnel. We have a different major categories here. It increased 356,000 from 2022, primarily due to increased wages and salaries expense of 300,000. And then also increased retirement pension expense of 49,000. We did have increased hourly pay rates. We did an adjustment last year, and then we've had a COLA increase and merit increases. And then also we have an increase in employee headcount. We did have a couple positions in the past year. And so as far as these expenses go, pretty much what we expected. If you look at overtime there, the second line down, we can see 172,000 this year through 6 months versus 165,000 last year. So overtime's up a little, really not too much. But that just indicates really we've been short drivers, equipment operators in both years. Yeah, that's what's driven that. But when you look at the total here on total personnel expenses, down at the bottom there, as far as the percent of budget, we're 42% of the budget. And so that's helpful, especially when you see some of the other costs that are coming up. So we're under budget, and a lot of that's just due to the equipment operators, the vacancies. So it helps us somewhat financially. We'd still rather fill the positions and have the drivers. On to the next thing. This is the operating expenses for the 6 months ended June 30th. And they increased 746,000 in 2023 compared to 2022. There were increases in fuel expense of 63,000, maintenance expense of 101,000, landfill disposal fees of 108,000, and vendor recycling fees of 560,000. And so those were the major increases. We did have a couple decreases. The truck lease expense decreased 60,000. That's because we leased less hook trucks this year to go along with the scrap program. We leased 16 last year and 2022, and this year we're leasing 10. And then other expenses decreased 42,000. And so when we look at this, we can see our total expenses are up 12,320,000 through 6 months. And when we look at the operating expenses, they're a little over budget so far this year. You can go across their percent of budget, they're 51%. And they are up. We got to be a little careful with that because we paid some things that relate to the whole year already. For example, we paid the rent for this building, and that's in there, and that's really for the whole year. So that kind of, it can distort that 51% number just a little, but the bottom line is our operating expenses have gone up. And then when we look at the total expenses there down at the bottom, we're at about 47.5% of the budget so far through June. So bottom line number, 556,000 this year versus a negative 191,000 last year. So any questions on this so far? We'll get into some detail on some of these expenses coming out, but any questions so far? Okay. Total fuel expense, this is one I think we've all felt personally, and you see it here, but the graph on the left, the total fuel expense, you can see that just the last 3 years, in 2021, we're up about 13%. In 2022, we were up 12%. And in 2023 so far, we're up about 10.5%. So we feel that it's, something that's happened, and we're trying to look at it and see where do we think this is going in the future. On the right, we have the cost per gallon. The blue line is the diesel, and the red line, kind of red orangish line there, is CNG. And so back in 2020, diesel was $2.06 a gallon, and CNG was $1.63 a gallon. And then you go up in 2022, diesel averaged $4.76 a gallon, CNG was $1.91 in 2022. And now 6 months into this year, CNG has gone from $1.91 up to $2.32. And diesel had dropped to $3.64. Now, since we did this into June, diesel's on its way back up. So we'll see where this happened, in another couple months. But, you get those type of costs and commodities, and they really can vary. And then over on the right-hand side, we're just showing the mix of gallons purchased. That's not dollars, but that's gallons purchased. And so about through 6 months, about 93% of gallons purchased were CNG, 7% were diesel. And last year it was very similar to that, 8% diesel, 92% CNG.
Wouldn't have many of our trucks refuel during the day.
We do have the CNG that, especially green waste, because they're not stop and go like they are on recycling garbage. They might be what we call chasing cans, so they do have to stop. There are other routes that do have to stop as well. But as far as a number, get that for you.
It's not a huge amount. Most of the drivers are out all day on a tank of gas.
The majority, I would say yes. And that's if they get the, yeah, that's the key.
Yeah.
Slow down.
Okay, on to the next slide, maintenance expense. On maintenance expense, really the last couple of years, we've seen increases. In 2021, we stayed pretty stable. In 2022, we were up 7%. In 2023, up 6%. And so we're looking at this, and looking for the future too. What do we anticipate, or what do we expect? We met with Fleet last week. These costs are going to continue to increase. They think it's getting a little better, but we still got a ways to go. So they said parts, they feel like the cost of parts is starting to come down a little, and availability's improved some. And then their labor rate, they're projecting, I think it's about 7 to 8% for next year going up. They were having a very difficult time getting mechanics and keeping them. And so they had to kind of change their recruitment, restructuring, those type of things. So the bottom line is, I think maintenance is going to continue as far as the labor rates and the parts. We'll see another increase coming up in 2024.
I think even if you think about yellow trucking, I know it's like, oh, good, we'll have more drivers, but the problem is anytime you see a major freight line like that going out of business, it puts more pressure on the other ones. The costs aren't coming down. You're just going to continue to see problems getting things where they need to go, and then the costs associated with it just has to go up.
Yeah, I worked in another industry that was really heavily involved with trucking, and it's amazing how trucking and diesel permeate almost everything that you can buy.
Yeah.
You think about it, food, you go to the store, even fuel's hauled. It's just amazing how that ties in with everything.
That's
So
just everything.
if those costs would come down, it would really help, I think, the inflationary pressures. I think that's one that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, your cost from 2020 to now is $200,000 more in fuel costs. in the last 3 years. It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
I was to say, we had a point not that long ago where we were struggling getting trucks, parts for trucks and get them out going and that. We have some still down there. We will get those out more soon. We have fixed and turned around. We're getting on that.
I don't know the time frame. I think it's improved some. There for a while, it was really slow, but I don't have specifics. I think it's improving somewhat. And then one of the good things that happened, and I don't know if this is by accident or we were fortunate, but we kept more trucks. And part of it was because we decided we were going to keep some of them to get older. And so we kept more trucks and we have more backup trucks, which has helped us through this scenario right now. So I'd like to say we saw it coming and we were smart. We did it for another logical, supportable reason, but I think it's helped. So, the next slide, this is refuse tons. The blue line there is 2023, and we can see we're holding pretty steady. Up at the top there, the total is 59,759 tons for the year. Not a lot of variation there. We can look back and see 2020, we hit our high point really on refuse tons for the last few years. And we talked about this before, the transfer station, first part of the year, we took more there just because of the conditions of landfills. And we were about getting stock there, accidents or safety, just, they were kind of a mess at that point in time. As far as what we pay Transjordan in June, we paid $37 a ton. That increased to $39 a ton July 1st. So they've gone up $2 a ton. I think the last 4 or 5 years, at least since I've been here, I think it's been every year. They've gone up $2 a ton. So right now, Transjordan will pay them $39 a ton. The landfill at $27 a ton, and then the transfer station $35. And we anticipate that those will go up at the start of the year. They're running into, they have very similar costs, equipment operators, maintenance, fuel, equipment, those type of things. Next up is the recycling tons. We have been decreasing, and in 2021, we are down through 6 months, about 7%. In 2022, down about 2.5%. And this year, we're relatively level. It has increased just a little. So we'll see how this plays out during the week. And this graph is what we pay on average our vendor recycling fee. So this is not internal costs, so it's what we pay our vendors that we process our recycling for us. So you see this, it's an interesting graph just because of the volatility. You see there at the end, at the second half of 2022, we felt really good. Hey, this is going well. And then it shot up like a mountain there. You see the black line in 2022. And then it's stayed relatively high. It's come down a little. It was about $80 a ton, and we hit about 60 at the end of June. But it's staying up relatively high so far this year.
And that's the combination of both vendors.
Yeah. As far as what we budgeted for this year, it was $40 a ton. So we're over budget in this category as far as spending. Next up is the cash balances. This is cash really and investment balances. We include both of them because our investments are liquid and we have access to them when we need them. But we see the trends here, the peaks, the valleys. You look at this, you go, wow, we're doing pretty good. Our cash has remained relatively stable, but you need to remember in 2022, we didn't buy any side load trucks and we didn't buy any light duty trucks. So that makes us look good, but once we start purchasing those, and we started this year, I'll talk about it in just a minute, it's really going to affect that cash balance. Again, it's something we need to do. We want trucks and we need that. Not buying trucks for multiple years is not a great strategy. It's long term. So. On to the next one, please. This is capital expenditures budget for 2023. The total budget we had was $5.3 million. We did purchase a used hook lift truck that we have received and paid for. And then also recently we paid for 2 chassis and the engines from Peterbilt. And those have been sent to the company that puts the back piece on those. And so that was two. We've also received some light duty trucks that we just paid for. So we're seeing some activity here. Right now, we're scheduled, hopefully, I'd say hopefully, to get 8 trucks. Actually, yeah, 8 trucks about November. And it went, well, actually, 10, because we have the 2 that we sent out to get the Armand and the back cargo area. But we're hopefully to get 10 side load trucks in November. We'll see if that happens. So but if that happens, you know, you go 10 times 415,000, you get up to over 4 million pretty quick. And so that will affect our cash.
But there will be, as Paul mentioned, the bodies of 2 of those trucks that will carry over for 2024, and we'll go through that financial, because that kind of helps us this year.
How long has it been since we've gotten a truck delivery?
2021.
Yeah, almost 2021.
Wow, yeah, ouch.
Next up is the certification balances as of June 30th. We look at this, and we talked about this at year end, we had some amounts we just out here. For 16, 17, and 18, that is all one customer that's received an extension from the county. So I'd like to get that cleared out, but we're not there yet. So it's still one customer. You look at this in total, and really, you can see the benefits, and about 2.2 million there for certification in the fall, usually in September. So we're working on that. That's coming up next month. And then you see the amount outstanding and real benefit to the district. And this is the customer refunds for this was for the second quarter of 2023. Customer refunds. And so this is a total, 27,000 there. You can see the checks that we issued and the express bill payments that we issued refunds for. This increased some. I think the prior quarter was about 9,000, and we had a lot of activity. We sent out the bills, our billing in April, and it had the new rates, and it just got a lot of people's attention. So we got a lot of questions. And I think we just had more activity this quarter. We also had one, it was kind of interesting, we had one case where a person, instead of paying $58.50, they paid $5,000, $850. So we got that one to them pretty quick, but that's one of the things that make the drive that. So, and I'm kind of impressed the check cleared. I don't know if I did that. Sometimes. Some of the cases, a lot of times, in some cases, not our customer, paying after an account is closed, those type of things, paying incorrect amounts. But we do, we talked about this before, we try to be responsive and quick in those type of situations, just because we know there's a customer and they need it. We want to serve them promptly. So we appreciate being able to do this quick.
We just hope whoever paid the $5,800 didn't have the amount to their first class flights or their cruise or their vacation.
You never know. So, any questions on any of this? As far as through June? Don, this is the cash projection sheet. And this is one where Pam and I talked about this and we decided to present it now. Just to kind of get a feel for where we're at and where we think we're headed. This could change fairly significantly in the next month. Once we get the tentative budget done, make progress on that, and then also do some other work in the next month. I think this will change some. But this was really as of a point in time when we wanted to look at this. We've talked about this before, and we made some adjustments. When I say adjustments, I'm talking about from last year when we did the budget, finalized, got that approved in November. To this case, we have made some adjustments. We actually did those a few months ago, but just wanted to talk about this a little. The blue area is actually dollars, and so that kind of gives us a history from a cash perspective. What's driving us? You see the total revenues there. operational expenses and then capital expenditures. And here, this kind of points out, we talked about earlier, last year in 2022, we spent 682,000 on CapEx. That was 2 front-load trucks that we purchased, and we really had millions budgeted. And so, and that helped with our cash balance. When we look at this for 2023, we did make some changes from the previous version. One was the beginning cash and investment balance was down 471,000. And that was primarily due to higher operating expenses in 2022. And so that was a negative. Another one that we did right in this, that we did in this scenario was we increased our budgeted operating expenses to 96% of the budget. We had those at 94 previously, and with what we've seen on costs, we bumped those up, and we feel like that gives us a little more realistic picture. And so that was another case where we bumped those up, and that was 399,000. The revenues in a previous version, this was an error I made. When we did that fee increase for 2023, I had 4 quarters of that in here, and it really should have been 3 quarters. From an accounting standpoint, we book and record those revenues that on the fee increase. From a cash perspective, you don't get the 4th quarter until next year. And so we're still getting that, but the timing of it was off, and that was an error I did. I was thinking revenues accounting, and I looked at it, I went back and told Pam, hey, I shouldn't have had, one of those quarters in here, but that was $637,000. And we're still gonna get that, but it's just not going to be in that quarter, so. Anyway, and then the next one, capital expenditures due to the timing of deliveries, it was a positive 474,000, which it benefits us. And I say positive cash operationally, is it really a positive if we don't get equipment ordered? No, it's not. So, but cash, it kind of depends on the perspective you take on that. So, but this is where we're at. We're projecting, you look at that ending cash and investment balance, a fairly significant decrease. And this is with the assumption that we're going to get all the trucks, well, 10 out of the 12 side-load trucks that we ordered in this year. And we'll go through this. Like I said, there's some things that will change and can change fairly significantly in the next month with doing the budget. But we just wanted the board to be aware of what we're looking at cash-wise and kind of, be mentally aware of this and not surprising. So that's the purpose.
Well, it looks like we might have to go out for a rate increase much sooner than we had hoped, but I still think we made the right decision because just the burden on people right now, I just think that if we get just a little bit smaller, and let them go a couple of years, a little bit smaller, just simply because of that, it's nicer on us not to have to go out as often. But I think we're all, I assume, all feeling just the pressure of this economy, and just a little bit was probably the best decision.
Thank you for that.
So this one, looks like you might need to do it in 25.
Yeah, depending on how this year pans out, and then next year, it's everything gonna stay the same or go higher. We're hoping that will somehow level off. Improve would be the best option.
But like I said, we'll bring this back next month and this will be updated. There's one thing, I can tell right now, our truck sales disposals, we won't have those proceeds this year. If we get trucks in November or December, we're not going to be selling trucks and getting them sold this year. So that would be a negative. We pick it up next year, probably. But there's just, a lot of times with cash, it's just the timing of it and we get it. And we need to aware of that. So, but the bottom line is we are feeling the increasing costs too. That chews down our cash balance over time. And I know we got a fee increase and we appreciate that, but you can still just tell and feel things. It's pricing a lot of things we do. I still, some of the stuff, sure, yeah, that's it. And do something or buy something, and I feel that way personally too a lot. Do something. So, wow.
Well, and the truck buying has just been a moving target since COVID. I mean,
Yeah.
we don't know if we can buy, we don't know if we can sell, we don't know what the parts, we get parts twice as much. That's been, I'm sure, before 2020, it was much more predictable.
Yes, it was, and then it'll be interesting to me when we start selling trucks again. They're a little older, but with it what happened. I mean, will the value be higher? Is it still CNG? Because a lot of times I think on the secondary market, you're getting smaller operators and they're not set up for CNG. So that loses a little bit of its value, but is it something with the arm or the truck? But it's going to be interesting to me to see what can we sell these at when it happens. And just a reminder, last year, the vendor did do a price increase. We came back to the board in 2022. You approved the price increase on the trucks. And then they tell us, like in September, you're not getting it anyway. Thinking, thanks. We did the extra work, but you're spot on with your point. There's been a lot of uncertainty and hopefully some of that.
It's the same in the recycling market. It's like, oh
Yes.
goodness, we're just all over the board.
Okay, Paul, thank you. Any questions for Paul and other members of the board? All right, we have a request that we accept this quarterly report, the second quarter financial report, and cash projection updates. So I'll entertain a motion to accept this.
So moved.
We have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Pam, General Manager's report.
And thank you, Mr. Chair. I will move pretty quickly through this, but one of the things I really want to point out, if you'll scroll to the next page, is the striving for employee satisfaction and development, looking at succession planning. So we have some stars that have risen up through the ranks, and just to state that we have had our own informal apprentice program. And James Kelsey was one of our first to do that. He was a container specialist years ago, and he had a desire to obtain a CDL and move up into an equipment operator position, understanding he wants to advance even more. And he understood that the path to do so was to get a CDL, become an equipment operator, learn the sidewalk routes, and then move up within the organization. And he did so quickly. He became a lead equipment operator. He competed and won the position of a quality assurance inspector, and that's what he's serving as now. And it was a very competitive process. That is an internal recruitment, and it's nice to have folks that have a desire to basically move up in the organization and want to develop skill sets and are hungry to do that. We have the tuition reimbursement program that we have 5 people that are taking advantage of that right now. I'm thankful for that. There's probably going to be more in the future, and I'm glad that we really encourage education. Just to talk about that briefly, Hazel has taken on the task and goal of developing the WFWRD University. And so that is basically having a platform for employees to go to online trainings. We will pay for courses if they're outside of the organization, as long as they relate to what we do here and somehow develop their skills going forward. And then other people that have advanced, Oliver Ballinsard was the successor to move into the lead equipment operator that was vacated by James. Ray Perry is one of our supervisors that has worked to be able to pass our equipment operators off on their permitting for the CDL driver to get them ready for the license process. So there are steps to getting a CDL. So she'll be instrumental in the apprentice program. Alex Hopus was the successor for Colby Sylvester, who moved up, and he was started as a container specialist, and sort of Dallas Larrabee, by the way. There's 3 of those folks that have done this informal equipment operator apprentice program, but they've come through the container specialist realm versus entering right into the equipment operator, if that makes sense on the difference between the 2. So at any rate, I wanted to share that successes with you and people that really have a desire to move up in our organization, which is great. We have folks that we, like supervisors, the equipment operators, that will be retiring in the next 2 to 3 years, actually. Okay, moving on. Customer satisfaction, I wanted to highlight the voucher program, which is very popular, especially out to the northwest, as you can see. I have the authority to approve 2%, waive those fees of 2%, we've continued to do that even though overall, there's 5% that has been used of those vouchers. I think it's very beneficial for the communities. It serves the public good, and the community's good. There is a higher utilization where residents live closer to the landfill. As you can see, Magna is the top user of that, and then there's Kearns. The new QR code will help to somehow control somebody using the voucher repetitively. So we may have one person that's using it 10 times during a year or more than that. So it will basically only allow twice a year. So I think we'll be able to regulate that a little closer. Originally, I had put on here to request a policy change, but I think I want to continue to evaluate with this new QR code coming in to see, can we regulate this? Who's going to call us to say they need more and why? And are there other options for them to do a community cleanup, like the trailer rental? And questions on that before we keep rolling?
On your vouchers by location, you've got Trans-Jordan listed. Well, I guess, I don't see how that works. These are other cities, they're going from Magna to the landfill,
To the Salt Lake Valley landfill.
so
And then-
Trans-Jordan actually has stuff they're taking over to the landfill.
Harriman, so Trans-Jordan doesn't give us any kind of a breakout.
Okay, so it's just the number of ones that are taken to
Place.
Trans-Jordan.
Mhm.
And you
Yeah.
cannot deliver to the transfer station.
Residential car truckloads, no. It's only for commercial or us to go to the transfer station. It's a little too dangerous to have residents going in there with their heavy equipment. But yeah, there is a residential area that we as residents, I've used it myself for electronic waste or even big bulky waste, that we can go into a certain area that's designated for residents to drop off our stuff.
I mean, proximity is a.
Is it factor?
Is
You can
a
see
big
that.
deal. So I guess the question would be, what would it, might it take to sector some time and or a day that they might allow that? They're not open on Saturday, right?
The landfills are, yeah.
No, the
Transfer station.
transfer station. Except for South Salt Lake.
I think it's twice a month on a Saturday. It used to be every Saturday and they reeled that back because of costs. South Salt Lake does not pay a tipping fee for their garbage because the transfer
They work
station
out a
is
deal.
housed.
And we'll work out something with them to say that other people go in on Saturday.
I can try. Let's try. I know before it's been, no, it's not. It's too costly.
But I was gonna ask them with some donuts.
Sounds good. Any other questions or comments on the vouchers? Okay, we'll keep rolling.
No, but on my
Yes.
notes, I put get vouchers today. So, hey.
Right on.
Yeah.
So this is the positive that I wanted to tout. And even though Shane just left the room, I'm sure he'll be back, but he's our safety and emergency coordinator who started December 5th of last year. And you can see that there are some trends in the right direction. We have claims that have gone down. We have had safeties actually increase. You can see that it's 70% out through the winter months. I think you can understand the why of that. There were days that we held our team back and had a later start for them during those heavy snow days. There was one day that we actually didn't collect and made sure we got the word out to communities. It's rare that we don't go out and collect. We would rather do a late start, and our drivers agree because they, work that Saturday. They'd rather not do it, but they understand if we have to make that call. So it's appreciated. But at any rate, you can see that the trends at the bottom, that we're going in the right direction. Unfortunately, 2020, COVID had an impact on everything, including safety and claims that were filed. But as you know, the claims that we do file are through the Utah Local Government's Trust. We also pay out of pocket, and I wanted to make sure I point that out. So our deductible is $10,000 for property auto. So if there are situations where we damage a mailbox, obviously we know that's gonna cost maybe $200 at the most. We wouldn't want to file a claim. So we actually have supervisors that will go out, go to Home Depot, buy a mailbox, at the customer's agreement, right? We want to make sure they agree. And basically fix that for them, which is a lot cheaper than filing a claim and having the trust file that for us. So that's just a small example, and that's what that 43,800 is about, in case you were wondering. And I mentioned the safe days, and in July, we hit 90% safe days. There's two different ways that we measure safety. So there's claims file, and we have the team appreciation recognition program. And we just got a $10,000 check back because we're doing so well with the claims. The trust sent it, and Paul brought it in and said, "We weren't expecting this." I said, "No, we weren't, but I'll take it." And I called Steve Hansen and said, "Am I understanding correctly that it's because we're performing so well?" And he said, "Yes." And because we were one of the first to roll out the TART program and give incentives. So we give a $25 Amazon gift card for teams that are accident incident free. We're 100% in July. So even though you see a 90%, that's safe days. So that's individual incidents, accidents. But the team appreciation, which is claims file, 100%. So
Nice.
anyway, that speaks highly of Shane's. And he walked back in, so we just got the great attention that he's well deserved. Okay, no questions, we'll roll along. Thanks, Renee. And then environmental stewardship, and we'll get more into this about the recycling discussion. This environmental stewardship goal has been in place for decades. So we've measured how do we divert waste away from the landfill. We have the green waste program. That's 2,500 tons, and this is through July. The recycling tons is just about 10,000. And then, of course, we look at the total garbage that we pick up. We also divert commodities away from the landfill with blast. So we have 7 central sites, and then the curbside program in certain areas, including Taylorsville, Mill Creek. I can go through, but the southeast is one. And then the subscription program for green is just that. It's a subscription. Residents pay a separate fee and $10.50 a month for that. Our fees are pretty much designed to try to get people to recycle more, and then also to sign up for green, because a green can is $126 a year versus a second garbage can, which is $234 a year. So, and then the glasses subscription as well. No questions? I'll keep going. I know we want to get into more discussions in detail about recycling. Financial stewardship, we try to balance environmental stewardship and financial stewardship because, to divert waste away from the landfill does take effort. Sustainability is not cheap. I think we've understood that when we rolled out weekly recycling. I think it was a quote in the Salt Lake Tribune of "It ain't easy being green" type thing. I mean, go back, but anyway. So it's not. But this goes into the financial stewardship, looking at inbound calls, using the landfill for waste on Mondays at a lower dumping fee. Paul mentioned that it's $27 if we take waste over directly to the landfill. We do have to meet the commitment of 20,000 1 ton in order to get that $27 rate. So looking at that year to date, we have almost 75,000 saved. And then Renee, I don't know if you want to get into the chat box and bot. I know that's been subject to attention.
Yeah, no, absolutely. When customer service started reporting me a few months ago, started looking at some of the financial benefits, obviously from the website last year. And then recommendation in here for the chat bot to expand that service. We were able to do that, and that also helped minimize some of our customer calls that are coming in. So one of the new KPIs I started looking at was cost per customer interaction. So looking at total customer interactions for the year, which includes emails, chats, and phone calls, divided, basically that number was divided into total annual costs for our employees. And so we've already come down 4 cents per for customer interaction, and we're forecasting an additional 5 cents by the end of the year, because the chatbot is a huge, huge thing, so even after hours, to remind everyone, they can get their answers. A customer can go on a chat and say, hey, you know, I have a question, it'll take them right to the page, like where they can find that answer. And then when we come in the next morning, we can answer those questions personally if they want to come back or whatever. So, but initially that decreases our email calls. So, no time is left. Right? So, thanks.
Well done, thank you. Scrolling forward, I know that scrap is a popular topic, and after I reached out to talk about the recycling, the cash, the apprentice program, it dawned on me about my third to the last call with board member Shelton of, what about scrap? It's like, oh, I'm so sorry. So what I have here for you on this presentation is overall results of where we're at. The information does not include Kearns and Magnet. We will wrap up in Kearns at the end of September, so we're currently in Magna now. But this gives an overall delivery reservation. In looking at 2023, where we're at, 119 delivery days this season, with an average of 60 containers per day, for a target of 7,100 containers. Understanding that, yes, it is less than 2022. I think, you know, I did point that out to say that we're not going to be able to do the 70, 75 containers that we did in 2022 because of staffing levels and safety. So you can see that the ratio is a little better as far as being able to deliver the higher number of containers. That means a higher ratio for the homes in each area, if that makes sense. That's what it does. And that gives the overall containers that were delivered. For, you know, Mill Creek, Taylorsville, those are our larger cities. Mill Creek is just over 15,000 homes. Taylorsville's just over 13,000, so that's why you'll see more containers in those areas. There's no questions, we'll scroll down. Tonnage information and costs related to that. There is a definite public benefit to scrap and having a container available for the bulky waste, and I don't think anyone would argue about that. You know, going into 2024, we want to sustain the service level, not cutting this program with understanding there is a public benefit. We hope to be able to continue with 60 containers a day, just pull down one more. And, you know, again, I apologize, I didn't put a lot of detail for 2023. I can certainly do that for the September meeting and send it out to you. We were looking at the number of days in each area, number of reservations requested, total receiving containers, and then the number that didn't get the service, how many were left on the wait list, and those stats we're still trying to pull out. It does take a little bit of time, so again, I apologize, I don't have everything for you. The 2024 schedule is right there, so that you can see it. And we start off in Mill Creek here. I know it wasn't popular for me to make this request last year of a fee for this service. I feel like it's my due diligence to come back and ask once again, and propose it for the 2024 budget. There's benefits to charging a fee in the fact that it really reduces the financial burden of, you know, pulling the cost for this service from the monthly fee. We already know that the monthly fee does not cover all of our services. This would be a way to help offset that cost. You know, in talking with staff, we really feel like that it would reduce the demand of the service and really hope that it gets more to the need. That those that need it will make the request and be willing to pay. If there are needs that are out there for code enforcement and so forth, those are handled differently than scrap. Those are handled with a trailer rental where a city may pay for that, or if it's a roll-on need for that, we'll do that with a separate fee for the municipality. Code enforcement, we work with closely with vouchers and so forth. We know there's community good for bulk cleanup, and we don't want to end it.
Pam, looks like we have a comment or question from Eric Barney.
Hi, thank you. Pam, in regards to the request to move this program to a fee-based approach as opposed to just a sign up and get it approach, I understand the finances behind it. I'm not sure our residents or constituents do. And so my only request for moving in this direction would be that there be total and utter transparency about the finances communicated to the residents so that they understand that it's not just we're taking money that has previously been used for scrap and putting it somewhere else and then charging them more, but that it really is scrap has become non-feasible from a current fee standpoint, and so we have to charge more.
Yes, thank you very much, Board Member Barney. And we could bring back more information in September to illustrate what we would want to communicate. And then certainly have you as a board weigh in on that, because you all have great perspectives. So I appreciate that.
Suggest a thought. I was thinking about this the other day. One of the things that a lot of entities do is allow priority service or to be able to pay an extra fee to be able to get it earlier in the month when the day you really want it versus just when you can get it. And if that's something this board would be considered, really consider that if somebody wants a priority service, they know they can get it at a specific time, specific who works for them versus, you know, whenever they can happen to get it. I will say, but I'd pay a little bit just to do that, even though I know it's coming out and stuff. I know others would too, if they know they can get it the day that they need it. And it goes right, it could be a weekend. Most people, weekends are the priority times. And if you're willing to pay for the priority time, I could offset some of these costs. That's a way of, we're not charging them if they don't want to be charged, but if they want a priority time, they pay to get that priority time. So just maybe an out of the box way of thinking about this. It's a service we're still offering, but allows them to say, you know what, I'm willing to pay for priority time. Also lets us know what kind of interest there is and people willing to pay for a specific time, specific day, those type of things. Because at some point, you know, we're gonna need to look at how we're gonna manage this ultimately. And having a service that might allow something like that, I think gives us some opportunity because I'd love to get on a Friday, which means I have an extra day over the weekend, right? And then get picked up on Monday. For some people, they might be willing to pay a priority fee to be able to have that weekend extra day. So it's just a thought process I have, and we're delivering to an area, we're in that area already. If we're willing to see what kind of interest there is in that and go that route, that might be an out of the box way of not charging people who are paying support, but allowing those who are willing to pay extra for a specific day and time, the ability to do that.
When we do a trailer rental, how many days do they have it?
And I believe it's 4 in their driveway, or 3 or 4.
And this is a 24 overlap of delivery on that 7th day, really.
Sherry,
Just the, in an extent, the trailer rental would be a priority. You can have it anytime you want. You just have to pay the full $190 and you can have it for 4 times as long. I would guess if you're looking at a fee, if you're only getting 24 hours and 4 days, probably may want to base it on that. That the $50 comes fairly close to that. We have paid a lot of the scrap program out of the general fee, so you know, probably that fee needs to be subsidized as well, I guess, you know, $50 it is. So, but those are, okay, with that, when you were saying that, what I was thinking, I said, yeah, if you really want, you can have 4 times as long anytime you want.
And it's bigger.
And
It is bigger.
It is bigger.
And if you don't need the bigger, you just need it at a specific time. Because that's kind of some of the discussion we've had in our neighborhood. I know I didn't get I tried to get it right here. And I didn't get it, but ultimately somebody didn't need it. I ended up getting it, but I got last minute notice and it came like a day later. It wasn't fair, you know what I mean? But I would have paid to get a weekend or something when I absolutely knew I could get it because there's some earthquake cleanup and a lot of damage and things that are out. So for me, that would have been a huge help. And our neighbors, we had a lot of conversation about that. We have had a lot of conversation about it since then. About where I live, but, you know, that people like to pay a little extra for priority service, they do. And
I hate to see this, I hate to, sorry to interrupt, and we've talked about that, you've talked about that priority service. I hate to see this scrap program turn into the people that need it most can't afford it.
I don't disagree.
And so the people who may need it on a specific date and in a disaster situation, or they need it for more than 3 or 4 days, I think that's where the trailer comes in. And because it's still so reasonable, that 4 days, large trailer for $150 is really reasonable. And usually the feedback I get from Taylorsville is if they know they're getting a trailer, one of the scrap, they're usually prepared to load it when it gets there, tell their neighbors. I think we've had more success in Taylorsville this year with people reaching out to their neighbors and saying, I've got a trailer coming, so get your stuff ready.
I just have a problem. Because I know I did push back on the fee. I was definitely one of the ones to push back on the fee last year. I guess historically, if I think about it this way, when I first joined the board, or I think one of the very first presentations I ever watched you make at our city council meeting, we were talking about is there value in staying with Woodford? This is well before we were still a special service district at the time and all that confusion. But we looked at the value that Woodford brought compared to other providers, right? And one of the big highlights was this program, right? It was like, yeah, but you get this with paying this fee, right? And so that's the way it's been presented to residents, and they understand that. So when we went and changed it to the program where it's not on the streets, that was a big adjustment for them to make. Some people are happy about it, some people are very not happy about it, right? So we made that change, and in a lot of people's mind, that was a reduction of a service they got, but they're still paying the same fee, but now our services got reduced a little bit, right? This year, in actuality, for all the reasons we all understand, that was reduced a little bit more because there are less containers. It's still not on the street where they feel like they had more access to it, right? And so they feel like it got reduced a little bit more. And we had a fee increase. And this is, to me, this is just like the general population's perception of what happens, right? Because they don't sit in these meetings, they don't understand the finances the same, right? And so then if we go next year, we're gonna say, we're gonna still have that reduced number of containers, plus we're gonna charge you $50. And in the next year, we're probably gonna come back for another fee increase. Then everybody's like, what are you guys doing? Who's on that board? Get all those people off that board. You know what I mean? Because I agree with what Eric's saying in that if we're gonna make changes, our campaign has got to really be so people understand the reasoning behind these. And you're gonna have a ton of people who have no idea because they're not gonna pay any attention to your campaign until they want the program and they go, I have to pay $50 for that. What are you guys doing with my money?
Yeah.
Right? So those are part of the problems I really see in implementing fees is it feels like you just continue to raise costs and you continue to decrease service. So how do we combat that would be
Yeah, video the whole thing. Oh, there it
Get a trailer pump. Or a free one, but there is one you can pay for. But we're not gonna take away from scrap and from those that desperately need this program and can't necessarily afford to.
Does it mean going to a centralized location? We're bringing, but we're not bringing it street, all routes managed, it's a local park. You're gonna have to bring it to us, but I'm thinking something like that. House or something that they're already still angry about and remember the way it used to be done. Thank you. That's all I. So yeah, the recycling dilemma, we're basically where we were in 2019. Going into 2018, we raised fees and that from the year of 2018 to like $2.25 per month. And then multiple recycling markets changed, but it has been coming. But really when things started to change. We did have bi-weekly recycling and they're probably just that really talk about, we do bi-weekly, and then board in place at that time. The county council, the mayor, wanted to roll out weekly so that on the unit and we help people have an avenue to increase their recycling efforts. And at that time, 2007, the recycling like district wide from subscription is when they second garbage can moved up $6 per month. So there was the immediate change trying to get people and incentivize people to recycle. The English program rolled out in 2013, so again, there was that incentive. So policies have been in place for a long time. And so I think that the change in the market, we started to pay more again. I really, one way is to look at the values that we use. And start holding on. So start charging them for 30 minutes. And then that would change.
generation. To help bring that. And to save us $400,000. And project for. Take that. But at any rate, the bottom line is we're in that state now. It's great rates. Recycling that, percentages have dropped, it's around 6 million. Well, we went from around 2,000 tons, in rolling out recycling gradually, fine. But then it support, it's the all-time high for 1,000 tons. And then the markets change, and then it starts to do more education of what we can do and well, we start to see our spending go down. Then, last year we hit right around that 1,000 tons of that. So the question is, where next? Should we put that? So the price, and I have on that page, sorry. And the training. That's just serious. We ask the residents, what. Cost. Where the baby money. It's going, we do something, they said yes. So we were planning on the survey this year, but I was saying, we can ask again, costs, or we can ask, what, if we don't understand what those are. The number one comment in the past, and what I hear personally, after 3 years of doing with us, recently, but just to kind of do a temperature check, program, what's going on. And I have to admit, when I was sitting at the booth, and I was like, yes, please, let's make sure it's empty. Please make sure it's empty. But that's one of the most valued commodities. I know. Yes. You know, empty document, things like that. It's just, and so I'm hearing this going, wow, there's still commodities that we're not capturing this because of the food check. And that was the number one highest comment in the 18 and 19 survey. And it's been huge. Of what people put in. And I think, coming into COVID, we have to suspend that personal contact and education efforts for that through social media, newsletters, that people may have done. They're doing that home projects, but it's like a little bit of leverage. The thing that we haven't been able to do is do a black. If that previously, the one that should roll out. I get a sense. And I can say intuitively, by just looking at the cans and neighborhoods that I drive around and see or bicycle around. There's recycling going on the bike. Sure. So I do have some to pull back services where we miss out. Different ways, I don't do them with you. Green costs, the Southwest, cycle cost 45 more per ton than. But if you look at my type of can, then you're talking a very green one. So it just depends on how you want to meet your interest. So, and looking at, sorry, and looking at set our rates and then wanted to make sure that I point out the fact that overall cost for recycling is less than half. The other highlight is to look at sustainability. snapshot. Decision about, giving back services on this particular staff. All inclusive. They are going, we're, the proposal is to go forward and continue with the service levels that we have. If we decide to start without, and trying to do as many people as with that as we can. So, anyway, I know that it's not going. I'm just seeing the direction, one, service level, and two, on the recycling survey itself. Now, we want to try to see on that survey, I'm to ask you the residents who are really paying more, eight, ask that question. So I'm gonna add that.
Yeah, so let's open up the comments from the board on those two questions. So one is service level, service frequency within the section, and the other for survey. We have a draft survey here. So any comments and questions, concerns?
If I'm here, when I say this, channel 2 did a special. I'm assuming they special. I answered, absolutely not. So it seems like there's a piece of confusion up there.
Yeah.
That seems to be a talk. You're totally different things. And channel 2, I don't know if I can make this reference. So what is the?
Yeah, so, Mayor Mills, we've been going through, we have a sticker campaign and the lid on the can, we're embossing the recycle bag. So we've updated the recycle bag to the force input, and we actually have keys the box on there is acceptable as long as we don't have any grease. Yeah, there's no oil, they can go in there, cardboard pizza. I know there was confusion, there was a lot of don't put paper in there in some of the cities, and that trickles over to us. I mean, when one city does, well, if there's a big splash about we're going to do this or that, and it does trickle over to us. But an example is recently, Shore has announced the government of no green list. Well, I had a gentleman at the Southeast Township case ask me, so what are you guys not going to do? What are you sending over? I'd like to try to make green list. Absolutely, you can still put it out, fill it up, use it, and take it over to the Salt Lake Valley. I think we need to keep the education going, and I really feel like there's a lot to be captured in opportunities out there. For education. Thank you for that question.
Other input on the frequency question and survey question.
I think that would be is both use it. Not every week. Don't have that. Used to have a map on the spread of which weeks we're in, which we're out. And so in the weekly, it's just it was a great benefit. I think we take advantage of it. I hate to see going back to like we don't know what to understand why I don't. Total garbage waste, how many tons?
For curbside only, I think it's over 100,000, just over 100,000 tons for curbside.
So 15-20% of their stuff is recycling process. That's their.
Personally, I prefer we. In fact, I just got a text from my wife saying, you have 5 boxes delivered in books. I'm a book buyer. I don't get a new book almost every day, and I fill up that food can. I would almost rather pay the higher fee than go there every week. Plus I would forget.
Yeah.
That's yeah.
We don't put our can out every week, and sometimes it's full. We don't put it out when it's full, but because we have a very long drive to get truck home.
But I think if you're right there, even if it's a corridor before you put it out, it's just what you do. And it is hard to remember which way to get or which way. I believe that people adjust to that if we decided financially and based on usage and stuff, to adjust to that. We'll figure it out and think about it, but I'm not sure exactly. This is kind of almost exactly that topic, but we had a youth council, we had our retreat last weekend and getting to know our next youth council and we asked them what kind of activities they wanted to do. And the couple of them were very strong about cleaning up our city and really understanding recycling. Why aren't we doing recycling? How come, why aren't we doing more glass? Why aren't we doing more green waste and things like that? And it's primarily because they're young and they don't understand the different programs, but maybe their parents don't either. But our youth council is going to be doing an activity about that, right? I'll reach out to you guys and invite you, so I would pass that along to anyone here. Because I think that that is beneficial if we get the younger people to really start understanding it more, or, you know, Mom, we don't put that in there, kind of stuff, you know, just to really understand different levels of people, because at some point they are going to be having their own places and training the younger kids to really understand the recycling process. I think the benefits we were my challenge is to utilize your youth councils or things like that to really promote recycling or understanding of what's available, what's not available.
So in San, I think it's 2 years ago, went from every week to every month. And we are still in very good place. It's still one of the top 5 complaints. It's when can we bring that back? I mean, people are mad about it. I took an historical before I even cast my vote, because I thought, well, this is an issue that everybody's an expert. So I'm going to shoot this out. We pay more, or we keep it every week, or we go to every other week and keep it constant. 81% of the people that responded to my poll said we want to keep it every week and over. By majority, the council made another decision. And yeah, 2 years later, it's still a problem. And we get back the every week. So, and you know, yes, people were doing it. Yes, people were not breaking down their boxes, but and keeping containers full. The other ones could have been less full, but it doesn't matter. They want to keep it. It's what they want to do.
But I think that's an important question on the survey. Are you willing to take more?
Yes.
Get it done, that's.
Right.
I think you have to
Make sure.
understand that. But if you're gonna pay more, are you okay with that?
Perhaps we give the price difference, landfilling versus recycling. And that's tricky right now because, you know, if you look at snapshots, it's not quite $1. But certainly ask them about $1, I can all the team, what is that amount we want to put on there to say, are you willing to pay this much more? Or, you know, recycling on a weekly basis. And then what is the question we want to ask? You know, we know that if you get it by ton, it's 4 to 5 times more. Well, that wouldn't be an accurate thing to put on a survey, right? So before we look at the price difference, I have to decide. So
That makes some sense. And I think that really when you send the survey out, I think it's also important to even send, I don't know exactly how you do it, but maybe some educational information to their beforehand, how to understand what are people sending out. So because here's what we're facing, there's changes in that commodity market and the fluctuation, you know, not too crazy, but it would be good. Because if I just read the survey, like, you don't understand just why you're even asking or how to. It's like, why are these guys just wanting to increase fees again? This is what there we go. So
On the fee and include upfront what you can recycle, what you can't. Because if they're going to read this, they may not have had any other information. And they're more inclined to read a survey than just general information. Please, it's a QR code, so you can see what you've been deciding.
Just like other questions, maybe another question could be, if it depends to the website, or you may know, or scheduling favor. Just look, take a look, website's got a lot of like the information, including pickups during snowstorms.
Like the right comment.
Yeah, because they're asking about the what is that? Put the big old website on there, the QR code.
Other people put survey or.
Another question that might be there, it's still like available on the website, you'll know that go to the second, but I don't know if you know that there will look up for something cycle. Yeah, the recycle, so it's a simple question where you go to the website, and then any items, it's recyclable. It'll put it in a session. Just, you could educate towards the end of the survey. Thank you.
You got your.
Thank you very much.
Is that it?
I believe so.
Item 4.4 is the continued discussion on possible audit review. Time let's postpone that discussion to our next meeting. In fact, this might be good to actually have in connection with our budget discussions on year end. And it's not a usual. That moves us to 4.5. Katerina, you can give some information on the UASD convention.
Thank you.
Please, go ahead.
As you may know, that by popular demand, the UAS conference convention is again November 8th, I think that's Wednesday, Friday. And specific training and certification for board members is available on Wednesday. They do have a few to be announced topics still, but it's pretty early. So don't have anything else online yet. The group's also willing to pay for any board member who would like to attend. And if you'd like to make it to meet up kind of like Friday, September 8th.
That's the early bird, yeah.
It's for the early bird, $30 savings. Yeah, so. Oh, great, yes, good. Yeah, okay. And if you haven't heard that, I will just tell you, I've been going to the UASD for, to be my 27th year. So, just know the training is amazing, what they have there available. And I was shocked at how much it applies to actually what I do the county. Understanding construction and it's put a leg up, it's given me, skills to deal with issues on a county level and I understand what everyone's supposed to work versus not. I mean, that's, so it's always given me the ability to have some things and have the tools to be able to maybe like tap it. Wow. So if you have a friend, so it's very good training.
Thanks. So yeah, please get with Katerina, that you're supposed to go by the 8th of September. Okay, that moves us to item 5, full session. I don't believe full session. Any other board business for members of the board?
Yeah, I'd like
Right.
to. Hello?
There appeared to be none. The next meeting will be Monday, September 25th at 9 a.m. You'll
Can you hear me?
I'm sure you said and just have the discussion on recycling survey.
Very pretty about the audit committee next one.
Yeah, let's discuss the audit committee for sure. I think that's a great topic to discuss. Let's get into that. All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So.
Second. Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. See you tomorrow.
I must be down. Or you can.
Yeah. That towel thing stopped.